Hello everyone, and welcome to my first actual video. By that I mean a video that isn't just an FDM showcase. Instead, this is going to be the first part of my full calibration guide, specifically for a 0.2 nozzle and for printing miniatures. Calibration itself isn't very complicated, but there is a lot of information about it out there, so splitting this guide up into several parts is necessary, otherwise this video would be several hours long. Before we start though, I want to put a little disclaimer here at the beginning. I may have published my custom high quality settings over on the FDM miniature subreddit, which, by the way, if you haven't, I highly recommend you to check out. The community is very welcoming and helpful and provides a ton of useful information. But despite these custom settings, I don't like to think of myself as an expert. The things I'll go over in this guide might not apply to everyone, and if you notice any mistakes or want to suggest improvements, please point them out in the comment section. It is also possible that by the time you're watching this guide, some of the information might be outdated or flat out wrong. And if that's the case, if I made a mistake, then please point that out as well. I didn't really know what to use for the visuals, so for the most part of the video, you'll be watching me paint a miniature that I have printed. With that out of the way, this part of the guide is going to serve as an introduction to calibrating your filament. I won't be going over the calibration process itself just yet. Instead, I want to talk about why you should calibrate and what you can expect from it, situations where you don't necessarily have to calibrate, and finally, what you'll need for the calibration. To start things off, why should you calibrate? Well, if you are expecting that you'll be able to take your prints to the next level and see drastic quality improvements, you'll unfortunately be disappointed. There will be an increase in quality, but that is not the main reason why you should calibrate. Most modern 3D printers already have a very good auto-calibration, so doing it manually is less for quality and more for consistency. When printing something delicate or with a lot of details, we want to make absolutely sure that there is no over-extrusion or other issues that could cause the print to fail. So, not only do we want to figure out the exact values to use for our print, more importantly, we want to make sure that those values are used each time we hit print. This also means that if you are printing chunky models or something large like props for a cosplay, you don't really need the manual calibration. It will still be beneficial, but a little bit of over-extrusion is not going to ruin a massive print, at least not in a way that you couldn't fix with a bit of post-processing work, something that you can't do with miniatures. So if you print a lot of vehicles or terrain, you'll probably do just fine with just the auto-calibration. So what do we actually need for the calibration? You might argue that all we really need is a printer and filament, and yes, I suppose, but there are a few things that will make the calibration a lot less frustrating. Let's get the big one, and arguably the most debatable one, out of the way first: a filament dryer. Now, the reason I say that this is debatable, whether you need one, is that assuming you're using PLA and you don't live in a climate with a constantly high humidity, the general consensus is that you don't have to dry your PLA. And for the most part, I agree, it should be good to go right out of the box, assuming that you have purchased from a reputable source. Now with PETG, it's a different story. The manufacturer will often tell you that to get the best results you'll have to dry it, but since 99.9% of the people watching this are going to be printing with PLA, that is what we're going to focus on. With all of that being said, I still recommend that you do dry your filament for two reasons. The first one doesn't really have anything to do with calibration and applies to 3D printing in general. That being, there is no real reason not to dry your filament. When done properly and within reason, you cannot over-dry filament, so at absolute worst, it's just not going to do anything. But at best, it will save you from a failed print. Additionally, it also makes troubleshooting a lot easier. Go onto any website where people are asking for help with their FDM prints, and I can guarantee you with 100% certainty that regardless of what the actual issue is about, someone in the comments will be recommending to dry the filament. Cleaning your print plate and drying your filament are perhaps the most commonly suggested solutions to any problem you may have when it comes to 3D printing. They are the FDM equivalent to have you tried turning it off and on again. So, by doing that preemptively, we streamline the troubleshooting process. That way, you may not know what exactly is causing the issue, but you do know that it's not wet filament. You might argue that there is a reason not to dry the filament, and that would be the cost of a filament dryer. Now, I own a dual chamber one by Creality. I picked it up for around $70, but you can get single chamber ones a lot cheaper, between $40 and $50, and looking back, that's probably what I should have went with. Now, throwing $50 at something that you may or may not even need isn't something that everyone can or wants to do. But look at it this way. If you look up a calibration guide for a specific nozzle size, specifically for miniature printing, I think it's safe to say that you're probably fairly invested in the hobby. And having the option to essentially permanently remove one thing off of the list of the things that can go wrong for a one-time purchase of $50 is a pretty good deal, in my opinion. But there is also a second reason to dry your filament, and this one has to do with the calibration. You can think of the calibration as solving an equation almost, and the moisture content of your filament is part of that equation. This means that we want to make sure that our next spool is as identical as possible to the one that we've used for the calibration. Let's say our current spool, the one that we're using for the calibration, has a moisture content of 15%. We add our temperature settings, the flow ratio, and the pressure advance to the equation, and that would equal 100% printing quality if we solve it correctly. Now, our next spool that we order might have a moisture content of 17%, but we've based the calibration on 15. We can't use the same parameters and expect the same result if one of our variables has changed, so we might end up with only 97% printing quality. I'm gonna be honest, realistically this is only going to be an issue on paper, and you're unlikely to notice any major differences. It is going to be close enough. But technically, it is not what you've calibrated, and technicalities are what calibration is all about. After all, if you go through the effort of calibrating only to then be content with it's close enough, why even bother? At that point you might as well stick with the auto calibration. Now, if you are just starting out, if you have never calibrated before, and you're not sure if you're even going to do it again, you don't have to get a dryer. But long term, it is definitely an investment that you should get. The next couple of items I recommend that you get is honestly stuff that you should already have anyway, and that would be the tools for basic maintenance. The fact of the matter is that we are more likely to encounter technical issues during the calibration than if we do virtually anything else with the printer. Specifically things like a clogged nozzle, so when that happens we want to be prepared to take care of it quickly. First, I recommend getting one of these lamps with a headband to make sure that you have good visibility while keeping your hands free. Even if you're working in a well-lit room, having essentially a flashlight pointed in whatever direction you're looking at is incredibly helpful. You should also have a pair of prongs in case you need to do a cold pull, as well as something to clean your print plate with. Now, I have seen people recommend all sorts of things for cleaning the print plate, some even suggesting using cleaning alcohol, and please don't. I'm going to get into more detail on this in the next part, but just a short version of it. Yes, cleaning alcohol is decent at removing filament residue off the print plate, but filament residue is not what is causing most adhesion issues. It's the oil from our fingers when we touch the plate with our bare hands. And you know what is really good at removing oil from a metallic surface? Regular dish soap. Just plain old dish soap. Mix it with some water and put it in a spray bottle. I usually go with around 2 to 3 tablespoons of dish soap per cup of water and shake it well. Next up, you want to get yourself one of those brushes to clean your fingernails. The bristles aren't hard enough to damage your print plate, at least not the textured one. There might be a print plate out there that is super sensitive, in which case be careful. But at least with the textured one, you can get pretty rough with it and make sure to clean it properly. After that, you just rinse off the soap with some hot water and wipe it dry with a microfiber cloth. When cleaning the print plate, you should be wearing these one-time use latex gloves, simply because the reason why we have to clean it in the first place is because we have touched it with our bare hands, so obviously we want to avoid doing so, especially when we wipe it dry with the microfiber cloth. Finally, last but not least, a glue stick. I was a bit hesitant to recommend one, not because they don't work, but because they work a little too well and can quickly become a crutch. Or in other words, once people start using them, they tend to start using them for every print. That is not inherently bad, but it's not necessary. Worse, you might not be able to notice issues that will cause an even bigger problem further down the line if you always use a glue stick. You are essentially using a bandage even though there hasn't been any injury yet. Doing so won't hurt you, but you also won't be able to see what's under that bandage anymore. So I recommend that you get one, use it for certain parts of the calibration and unique prints that need them, but not for everything. And that should about cover everything for the first part. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. This was the first time I really ever messed with making a video, and hopefully you'll join me in the next part where I will go over the first step of the calibration, which will be preparing our plate properly and getting a perfect first layer. Take care everyone, and have fun printing.